Today we're going to look at how to edit interviews in Premiere. So you've shot your interviews, you've copied the footage from your SD card over to your computer, you've brought that footage into Premiere, into your project folder, and what I would recommend doing is creating a bin. That's what folders are called in Premiere, by clicking right-clicking and selecting new bin, and then call it interviews. So I've already done that. I have all of my interviews in here. They're separated out into separate bins in here that are based on the trips that the interview subjects went on. This is a global studies video that I made earlier this fall. So first thing I'm going to do is open up my one of my interview folders, and I'm actually going to color code these. So this box next to the clip tells you what color the clip is going to appear when it's in your timeline. See how this is this blue color? It's actually called iris in Premiere. So I want to color code all of my different interviews. So these two interviews are both Sydney, so I'm just going to right click, I'm going to label them, and I'll choose mango, makes it this orange color, and then maybe I'll go into Bulgaria and I'll say this clip will make it lavender, this clip will make forest, and that way when we drag these in, they'll just be different colors, and we can always just kind of tell who these interviews are just based off of the color of the clip in the timeline. So I'm going to go back into my Cambodia folder, double click on this clip, it'll bring it up on my source monitor, and then I'm just going to start searching through this interview to see what parts of it I want to use or might want to use in my finished project. Okay, so I'm going to go back near the beginning, and I'm just going to play forward by pressing spacebar or L. Which trip did you go on? And then I'm going to pause it right after I finish asking the question, because I know I don't want my voice in the finished video. So right after I ask my question, we have a little bit of silence. I'm going to set an end point there by pressing I on the keyboard, and then we'll let Sydney talk.
I went on the Caring for Cambodia trip.
And then I'll pause it again after that and set an out point by clicking O on the keyboard. And I want to make sure that I set my out point before I start speaking again, because I don't want my voice in here. It'll sound messy, and I just don't want to sort of reveal behind the curtain of me asking the interview questions. So if I had gone too far, where I say great, then we could use our arrow keys on our keyboard just to arrow back. I'm pressing the left arrow. And you can hear when you're scrubbing through using your arrow keys, you can hear my voice come in. It's quiet, but we want to make sure we don't get that in there. So I'm going to arrow back until it's complete silence. Right there seems good. I'm going to set an out point, and then I'm going to click on the middle of this clip, drag it down into my timeline monitor, and it has created a sequence for us. And it's also made this clip mango. So it's going to be easy to tell because all of Sydney's clips are going to be mango. So next thing I'm going to do is rename my sequence, because right now it just has the name of the clip, and I don't want that. I want to stay a little bit more organized. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to say SEQ-interview prep. And you don't have to do all those dashes and underscores. That's just a habit of mine. And then I'm going to say demo, because I've done this before and I want to make sure that I can keep these two sequences separate. I would recommend creating a folder for your sequences. You're going to have multiple sequences in every project that you do. So just right click, new bin, call it sequences. I'm going to delete that because I've already done it down here. And then you can just drag your new sequence into that folder. And that just keeps them all easy to find. So here it is. So I'm going to go back to my source monitor, make sure that it's selected in blue so that we know that we're working in there. This blue box will tell you that you are. If you click on the timeline, you can see that blue box show up here. Same with the program monitor, project window. So we want to be in the source monitor again because we're going to look for more useful clips. So I'm going to see what the next question is. How was your group? Did you all have a good dynamic? And I'm going to, again, pause it after my voice, and we have that silence there, set an end point.
Oh, yeah, our group was awesome. It was a lot of people who didn't know each other, a lot, pretty.
And I'm just using L on the keyboard. I'm pressing it multiple times to go a little bit faster, to move through the interview a little bit more quickly.
Before, so we were all able to make new friends, and there was a good range. There were like 2 sophomores, majority juniors, and then a couple seniors.
And I think I'll stop it there, and I'll arrow back a few frames before she starts saying Set an out point by pressing O, and then I'm going to pull this clip down. Then I'm going to press Z to bring up my magnifying glass, hold down Alt and click just so I can see everything here. And then I'm just going to make my way through each interview doing this, just finding the bits of interview that I think might be useful. So I'll show you what my finished interview prep sequence looked like. I just have all of my interview clips here. They're color coded, and I can just tell by looking at these clips who the interview is with. Actually, I color coded these by the trip that they went on rather than the person. And the reason why I did that is because I wanted to make sure I was giving equal representation to each trip. And if I bring up my final cut, you can see that there's a good mix of every color in there. So we have our interview prep sequence, and this is going to be really useful for us. We've pulled out the useful bits. We've gotten rid of our voice. We've gotten rid of any answers that just aren't going to cut it for us. They're not going to be parts of our final project. And what we can do now is actually just click on this interview prep sequence here in your project window. Right-click on it and say duplicate. And then I'm going to rename this to cut 1. Double-click on it to open it, and you can see it shows up here. I'm going to get rid of some of these other distracting sequences that are open. And now I have 2 identical sequences. The reason I like to do this is I can select all of these clips, all of these useful interview clips, move them way over here past the point where I know my video is going to go. I know that my video is going to be under 2 minutes. Your video might be under a minute or something like that. So as long as I drag it past there, they're not going to get in the way. And then what I can do is just start pulling them over here when I want to use them. That way I know what I've used, and I just have them right here to work with. So I'm going to Control Z to undo that. So that's how I organize my interview-based projects, and that's how I start to sequence those interviews into a narrative. So I'm going to open up my my cut 1 here and walk you through what I was thinking for my narrative. So the first step that I always take in editing an interview-based project is to come up with a story structure that we're going to use to organize our clips. This is going to make your edit go so much faster. So the first part of the video is each student telling me where they went.
I went on a trip to France and Toulouse last year during spring break.
I went on the Caring for Cambodia trip.
I went on the Iceland trip.
Quebec City.
The Bulgaria trip.
The Toulouse, France trip.
Bulgaria.
I visited Iceland for a global studies trip.
So this is a project where I asked pretty much every single student the same questions, or at least the same base questions, and I asked follow-up questions. And that made it really easy to structure this narrative, because I basically just structured it by the questions that I asked. So the next question that I asked was, why did they want to go on the trip in the first place?
I was interested in going around the world and seeing how other people live and not just staying in my bubble.
I really liked the language, and I wanted to go to that country and practice and speak that language.
I wanted to learn more about photography, and Iceland was on my bucket list.
Then after that, there were a couple of service-based trips, so I wanted to touch on why service was an important element to the decision to go on the trip.
I'd always seen the toothbrush drives that they do every year, and I wanted to do more than just bringing in toothbrushes. I wanted to actually meet the kids and teach them English classes and work on a service project at the school that would benefit their learning.
I really wanted to go on this trip because I wanted to make a difference in these children's lives.
We visited an orphanage in Beden. We just hung out with them. We played with them.
After that, I wanted to go into some of the takeaways from the other students who went on trips that were not service-based.
I definitely learned more about the history about Quebec, but also how to be more independent and explore things by myself, not just with a group.
I've never been out of the country without my parents, so this was my first time kind of just going out there and being independent.
You kind of walk away from the trip with a greater connection with the world, I think.
We wanted to capture either the sunset or the sunrise, so we'd either do early morning or late at night to capture that kind of natural light that made the photos really pop.
The last thing I wanted to cover, this was supposed to advertise global studies trips for this coming year. So I wanted to find out what these students would tell other students who were considering going on a global studies trip. How would they convince them to go?
If you're thinking about doing a global studies trip, go for it.
The value of global study trips are to experience something that you have never done before, that's outside your comfort zone, something that's foreign to you.
You're learning things that you can't learn in a classroom, like you're experiencing society, experiencing the culture.
It's something that you're probably going to take with you throughout your entire life, and you're going to see it woven in to what your role is in the bonus community.
Okay, so that's how I organized my project, and you can see that I had a good mix of all of my interview subjects of each trip. You can see that just by looking at the sequence, because you can see all these colors here, and that was really important to me to make sure that I had a good representation from each trip. And 2 minutes is on the long side, I think, for a video like this, but we wanted to make sure that we gave every student a chance to share their stories. So music can play a big role in making sure that the pace doesn't feel too slow. So I won't play the whole thing again, but you can hear it with just a little bit of music in the background. It does make a difference.
I went on a trip to France and Toulouse last year during spring break.
I went on the Caring for Cambodia trip.
I went on the Iceland trip.
Quebec City.
The Bulgaria trip.
The Toulouse, France trip.
Bulgaria.
I visited Iceland for a global studies trip.
I was interested in going around the world and seeing how other people live and not just.
So that'll be another step, is adding that music. There's also, you probably noticed when we were going through the interviews that there were some rough moments in there where the audio sounds really jagged or just kind of choppy. So in the next video, I'll show you how to fix those problems. So a couple other things. It's really important to have this linked selection tool highlighted, especially when we're working with audio and video that need to stay together. If I turn this off by clicking on it, it turns white. And then I move a video clip, it's going to move it away from the audio, and the audio is going to stay where it was. And what these red numbers here, this plus 156 is telling you, I think it's actually 156.02, that's telling me that this audio is now 1 minute, 56 seconds, and 2 frames earlier in the sequence than the video is. So they're out of sync. Now, if we had moved this even just like a few frames, it's going to look uncanny because the video and audio aren't going to match.
How other people live and.
So I'm going to undo that by pressing Control-Z on the keyboard. If I click this link selection tool and then I move an interview clip, the audio and video are going to stay together. Another really useful tool in Premiere is this time code up here. So what we have is we have hours, minutes, seconds, and frames. So there's 24 frames in each second. And, obviously 60 seconds in each minute, 60 minutes in each hour. And what I can do here is if I give you a note, or if one of your group members gives you a note that says like at 36 seconds and 12 frames, there's, a piece of this interview that we want to cut. What you can do is click on this and then just type in 0000 for 0 hours, 0 minutes, 36 seconds, and 12 frames. Press enter, and it's going to go right to that spot. You actually can just type 3612 because, or let's just try another one like 4812, because those are the last 4 numbers. Now, if we wanted to go to like a minute and 12 seconds and 14 frames, do it like that. So that's going to be useful, especially going forward when I start giving you timecode notes. That's what that means. This is your timecode. For now, thanks for watching, and let me know if you have any questions.